Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back after what's probably been the longest period within a season that I have not recorded a video. Took the time to just recharge, find the fire again, and I'm back, and I'm very much looking forward to producing content once more. I hope you had a magnificent international break, and equally, I hope you have a terrific day upcoming. What you will notice in today's video is it's slightly differently done. Felt like going for a different style, less text heavy, more picture heavy, different colored backgrounds, and a different starting screen as well. And as you can see on screen, what's coming up today is the best wildcard, in my opinion, the best free hits. Whether we should be wildcarding or free hitting at all, irrespective of how good the draft looks, Ismaila Sarr replacements, and just a general look at the mids, including Palmer and Cunha, as well as the man that you see in the bottom left, Ange Postecoglou. Not only does this have big implications on Nottingham Forest, should we keep their assets, should we be selling their assets, should we target their attack more, sell the defense, but also it has a huge effect on FPL in general, because now all of a sudden the fixture prospects against them are completely different, which affects every team and the teams they're playing in the near future especially. So a lot to digest there, and something I'm very much looking forward to doing. If you enjoy the content, if you have been enjoying the content, a like, a subscribe, a hype, all would be much appreciated. And thank you so much in advance. Without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into it. To start with an extremely exciting topic, and that is the appointment of Ange Postecoglou to Nottingham Forest. The first thing I would like to speak about is his system, whether he will replicate what he did at Spurs in terms of that, the underlying philosophy, and why I think that might actually change this time around. If you look at many sporting athletes of the past, ones who have achieved great success, at some point in their career, they got knocked down. Messi, Ronaldo, Jordan, Woods, etc., etc. And they all use that pain at different points in their career to almost propel them to that next level. It's a very common sequence, not only in sport, but for anyone who achieves any sort of success. It's not always smooth sailing. And I just wonder, following his delivery of a Europa League trophy to a club which had not won a major trophy in 17 years, and the one that they did win was an EFL Carabao Cup, which is not of the same caliber of the FA Cup or the Europa League or the Champions League or the Premier League. The manner in which he did it was very fairy tale like. The celebration parade, which only would have enhanced in the connection with the fans, all of that, right? And then to get sacked after that, I think would have caused him a fair bit of pain, and understandably so. And I wonder if that, following his 2 years at Tottenham, and them not really being as successful as he wanted in the league, I wonder if all of that combined has finally got him to realize that his system is probably not sustainable at the absolute top level, whether it be top four or even going for the league. It's just not got the fundamentals needed to achieve that level of success in this Premier League against the competition that he has. And I wonder finally, if that great amount of pain he would have felt right at the end was enough for him to change his system and his philosophy. And you know what? I honestly think it might be, because I can't imagine it would have been easy, right? Very unusual circumstance in which to get fired. Probably one that's harder to accept. And yeah, I do genuinely think we might see a little bit of change, at least from Ange Postecoglou defensively. Now, if we actually look at Forest defensively, right? This is his old system at Spurs. I'm going to focus on the backline in particular at first, and then we'll come on to the attack slightly later, which I actually think is better suited for his system now than it was at Spurs. But his backline, most definitely not. If you look at what Spurs had, Mickey van der Ven and Destiny Udogie, even Christian Romero, all those three in particular, they all had, especially van der Ven and Udogie, great recovery pace, and as such, they were very good at stopping those attacking transitions and being able to defend a huge amount of space that was available behind them, and the frequency at which opposition could send runners into that space and then find them through balls, passes between the lines, and then they go, or just long balls, right? They had to defend it at such a high frequency, and they were hard things to defend, right? Now, if I were to put the Forest players in this particular situation, I do not think Milenkovic will be able to cope with that anywhere near as well as the Spurs centre-backs did. Nor do I think that Ola Aina inverting from the right side will have as much success inverting and functioning in those pockets as Pedro Porro did, nor Nako Williams. Now, Destiny Udogie, that wasn't really his bread and butter, which is why I would have liked an asymmetric dynamic. But nonetheless, neither of those two are probably going to be too comfortable in those pockets. Now, let's say he plays Zinchenko on the left as an example. Well, in defensive transition, he can get hurt, right? He's not going to be able to protect the space anywhere near as well as someone like Udogie was. Yes, okay, he's better on the ball, but is the trade-off worth it? Probably not. You're probably going to leak goals. And there's a reason Arteta benched him, right? And Ange Postecoglou is not an idiot. This is a very clever man. You don't get to where he's got to without having a good footballing brain on you. And he'll recognize this far better than myself. And with all that combined, right, the pain from last season, the fact that he's seen for a couple of seasons now, it's probably not sustainable right at the top to achieve what he wants, and the current crop of players that he has, right? If he had a more suited squad for it in defensively, fair enough. But at the moment, I don't think he does. I think, honestly, he is almost being forced now in a way by his life just to, and the set of circumstances to change it. So I personally do think we'll see a change. And we'll come back here in just a short moment. One other thing I want to discuss with the sacking is everyone's got a very negative view on it, and that's completely understandable. I mean, Nuno did a magnificent job at Forest, and not only that, he was loved there, right? But Ange Postecoglou has also shown the capability to be a very good leader of people and to be someone who, at least by the dressing room and the fans, at least a certain crop of the fans, to be adored as well. The other thing, which I don't think is being accounted for enough, is that Nuno's style of play, I personally do not believe, right at the top was sustainable either, if they wanted to start challenging for the top three, let's say, because it was very heavily reliant on being able to hurt teams in transition, but against blocks, he didn't have as many ideas. Whereas I think Ange is very different in that sense, and especially with his past experiences, on the assumption that he's learned and adapt from them, I think he'll be able to hurt teams who want a transitional game, but also hurt teams who want to set up in this deep block against him. So I'm actually more bullish, and I have a more positive outlook on the appointment than maybe others do. Over there on the side, you will see Chris Wood and everyone else. How will that stylistic fit come into play, and what does that mean for FPL assets? Well, for the defense, I've discussed that. I don't think it's going to be the Nuno approach. I don't think he's going to defend that deep. That's quite obvious. But I also don't think he'll be the Ange Postecoglou approach from last year. And I think it'll be a via media between the two. So do clean sheet probabilities go down? Well, in theory, yes, but it's not like Forest have been keeping many since the second half of last season. And you know what? Maybe this new manager bounce, maybe the fact that the players have to fight a little bit harder for this spot, especially with all the recruitment, may mean that actually you see a slight surge in clean sheets, even though the system is one which, on the surface, may not appear best for that. One other thing, though, about not having such a defensive system and not being willing to concede as much space and block as low is that you probably get a little bit more of the ball and you probably get to sustain a little bit more pressure. And as one of the great managers said, attack really is the best form of defense. You cannot concede when you have the ball, right? And I wonder if that will actually translate to clean sheet probabilities within the game in terms of the quality of performance actually surging. So that's something to consider as well. Overall, I don't think it's as bad of a sacking as people have made it out to be. Harsh, yes, but personally for me, whilst I see both sides, I don't think it's as bad. And then going back to their FPL assets, now more so their attacking ones. One thing I didn't like about Dominic Solanke's prospects as an FPL asset last season is he had such a challenging role. One thing you'll see with the number 9 is the actual 10 and the 8 in this diagram, they'll actually pull a little bit deeper, and maybe the fullbacks will go a little bit wider. And the 9 will find himself very isolated because the wingers really do hold their width. And the combinations available to himself, the ability for a man to burst from midfield and combine, but also run beyond. The ability for him to get a pass from the midfield and then hit a channel, hit the space in behind. Kind of similar to Watkins against Newcastle, where he really didn't have that support. In a way, right? All of that was a problem for Dominic Solanke. And Chris Wood is also not the type of striker to, similar to Solanke in a way, to really run beyond that last line too often. And he's probably not got, he doesn't have as good of an engine on as Solanke does, so he can't drop as deep, combine as much, get himself involved in the game there. What he really wants is supply into the box. And in this type of system, I think your 9, when they're not like the Sun type, who did so well at 9 for Spurs, can find themselves a little bit isolated. And I do worry about his prospects slightly as such. I really don't think the system is tailor-made to him at all. Now, he may tweak it, right? You may have one of the 2/8/10 in closer proximity to Chris Wood at a higher frequency than Solanke had. But if not, I think he could really struggle, because then you're really just relying on crosses into the box. And that too, it's not always just going to be him in there to find. Sometimes the 10, sometimes the other 8 will pop up. Maybe one of the wingers will crash from the other side. And I think it's taking away from his output. Whereas this current Forest side is very much set up to get him goals, right? So this system requires a very talented 9, or at least a very specific type of 9. I don't personally think Chris Wood's that. Like I expressed in the last section, or at least I alluded to, I don't think the defensive line height will be as high. I don't think he'll use this exact type of system. And even if he does, I don't think he'll do it at this line height. And yeah, those are my early thoughts on the Ange Postecoglou system and appointment and how it goes. So to sum it up, Chris Wood, I think will get a bit worse, and I'm already looking at exiting out of him. I don't think the defense will be as bad as people think, and I actually wouldn't be surprised if there was a surge in clean sheets. I don't think he's got the profiles necessary at fullback in particular, because even the new right back this signed isn't really suited to inverting to really play that system. So I think you might see something different. Maybe he'll invert one of them. Maybe he'll invert Zinchenko and then play a flat 3, as so many teams do now. And the other thing is Ole is injured, Neco Williams naturally right back. Maybe he just plays there. So lots of things to consider, but those are my overall thoughts for now. Before I show my favorite wildcard and free hit drafts, plural for free hit, I'm going to try and convince you not to press the button if you have not done so already. And if you have, that's cool. It's done. And even after this section, if you change your mind, you're like, oh, I wish I didn't do it. It's done. And I'm sure you can. No, I know you can absolutely still pull out a brilliant wildcard, and it can be one which propels your season into success, because at any given point, there will always be a really good team to pick and a team that does really well down the line. Saying that, here are my reasons why I would like you not to push the button, because I think it would make your chances of success smaller. We'll start with a free hit, because I think that's a bit easier. Firstly, when I look at this game week, I see a slight lack of upside associated with it. Now, some of you will be in a very unique boat whereby you don't have much Liverpool coverage at all. But for most of us, we've probably got Salah, and we have the route, and really everyone has the route with how the transfers have gone, or at least most people, into another Liverpool midfielder. And you know what? Not having a defender, whilst not ideal, not the end of the world, right? And they have Everton at home next, who haven't been great defensively. So the short-term upside to a Liverpool player is there. And you can attain that through free transfers. Aside from that, I don't look at the fixture set and think, oh, okay, I absolutely really need a double or a triple up from this team. The reason I'm not so high on Palace, even though they're on my free hit, is because they've lost Wharton, big blow in the middle of the park. They've lost Sarr. They obviously already don't have Eze. And you take 3 of their best players out of their team, that's undoubtedly going to affect the overall level of performance. First of all, like, you don't have the passing of Wharton in the middle. You don't have the carrying of Sarr. You don't have the ability to run in behind of Sarr. You don't have the finishing of Sarr. You don't have the defensive quality of Wharton. And then in general, like, the player relationships on the pitch are so well established. Palace don't rotate so much. Not having both of those players, you don't have like-for-like replacements of either. That could change that will change everything quite a bit. And it's not like Sunderland roll over. They are on 6 points for a reason. And they've got attacking talent. So in terms of the clean sheet, I could see it going, yeah, it's still definitely one of the best prospects for the week. But I just don't think that when you're playing the free hit, you wouldn't want this level of uncertainty. And this is a different Crystal Palace side entirely without those 2-3 players. So aside from that fixture, I don't look at any others and think, okay, yeah, you know what? I really see upside there. Even Newcastle haven't won a game yet. And I'm becoming increasingly aware of not trying to time the bottom with players. I don't mind jumping on one game late as much as I have done in the past. For example, Villa. They've got Sunderland in 6 and Burnley in 8. That could be really good for Rodgers and Watkins. And I was even looking at Morgan Rodgers for my own team. But I was like, all right, you know what? Everton's still not probably going to be an easy game. Whilst I actually think they could go there, and Rodgers in particular could do a decent job, or Watkins, but particularly I was fancying Rodgers for this game. You know what? Maybe, just maybe, let it play out, right? And let him actually show me that he's back in form and he's going to do it, as opposed to trying to guess almost the bottom. So that's my argument for the lack of upside on the free hit. And then the second and third thing really combined together, sort of. Your current squad, I don't think is that weak. And I've looked at a lot of squads on the timeline, and I really don't think they're that weak. And through a transfer here or a transfer there, I think they can be pretty much fixed. And like I said, I don't see too much upside with, for example, Newcastle or even Fulham. Fulham have always had issues with this squad against breaking down these blocks. They're very good in these big games at making it hard for teams to beat them and then hurting them in transition. But in these type of games, they've had issues and they don't normally hit teams for 3, 4, 5, right? Just given the type of players that they have. Obviously, they've got new signings, Kevin and Chukwueze, but whether they'll be introduced right from the off and make an instant impact, I'm not sure. And I don't think it's worth betting on for a free hit. And then, yeah, like I said, aside of that, not too many fixtures you probably want to target. You have a route into Liverpool, most likely. Your current squad's probably quite strong, especially with a couple transfers. And I don't think you need to essentially abandon it. And then the last thing is down the line, I expect there to be better opportunity. When everything settles and we know who's playing really well and who the better teams are, obviously Liverpool, yeah, but I'm talking about the rest. And we've seen them in form, and you can kind of very, very reliably expect a 2-0, a 3-0, a 4-0, then I think we pounce on them. But now with that uncertainty, I don't think it's necessary. And not having that option down the line, not having this bailout down the line when honestly the squads will probably get more stretched, Europe comes into play, and we'll be even further away from our optimal game week 1 squad. For me, it just makes sense to hold it. That's my free hit argument. The wildcard's not so different. The first point is that, which wasn't at the free hit, is that we don't have too much information at the moment, right? Everything's still very much up in the air. All you have to do is look at a bunch of ranks from the content creators, and they're not exactly the most flattering thing you've ever seen. I mean, it's just 7 figures pretty much across the board, right? And no one really was expecting that. And one of the reasons is there's not been an established template, and the template that the community did have has been blown apart by Calafiori and Chalobah and Semenyo, who people didn't have, and Grealish, right? And those guys scoring points. These low-owned players scoring points. But no one's really come to the forefront and looked utterly exceptional, or at least not enough players, whereby you can definitely pick them. I'd say the most threatening player so far in the Premier League has been Antoine Semenyo, right? But outside of him, I don't think of what... And Grealish has obviously been great, but I'm talking about when you're looking at goal threat as well, or even the defense. I haven't seen anyone and thought, yeah, you know what? You look absolutely unbelievable, and I can see this going on for a very long time. Then we also haven't had Europe start, the flood of injuries that come from that, the rotation, how that works with the sides, how managers will or won't rotate. Having that wildcard down the line, when you have that information, I think would be such help. And then if you use it now, when all those challenges arise, you may be slightly inflexible. You may not have too many transfers. You may not also be able to account for the fixture swing as well as that. And I think you could just get a little bit stuck. So where I don't think the squads are weak enough to wildcard, I personally would hold off. And I think that's most of the cases. And also, if it's really that bad, even a -4, I don't think it's the end of the world. I mean, a wildcard's worth far more than 4 points. Even if it's a -8, a wildcard's worth far more than 8 points. And if that's what it took to fix your team, then you know what? Consider it an investment which will pay serious dividends down the line. But yeah, that's my argument for not doing it. I don't really have too many positives for doing it. Like I said, I still think Game Week 1 squads, on the most part, are strong enough with the transfers and hits taking place. And most people don't even need that. Don't need too many hits, maximum 1, right? Yeah, that's my argument for that. Saying that, I actually quite like this squad for this game week. Overall, I'd prefer if my wildcards are a bit stronger. But as things go for Game Week 4, I don't mind it. Now, you'll see minus 0.4 million in the bank, and you'll probably be wondering why. Well, I figured that if you were to adopt this squad and you weren't going to afford it, most of you would take out one of the premium defenders. However, some of you would take out Gabriel for his short-term fixtures. I'm having him here as a long-term play, right? Really good expected minutes, and yeah, like I said, he's there for the long term because you need to build this wildcard, in my opinion, with at least the medium term in mind, right? But Gabriel's a superb long-term pick. Some of you won't want Kirkes. I actually think his prospects in the next 3 could be really great, as I expressed at the start of the season. And some of you won't want Cucurella. His 3 best fixtures are probably gone, maybe aside from Brentford. And then after that, could get a bit tougher. Maybe you think he gets rotated with Hato, and so on, right? So you could take the 0.4 out of one of those. Maybe you really didn't like one of the front 8 I had and you wanted to take money out of there. For example, I don't know, Ange to Dewsbury Hall, so on, right? So I thought I'd show what I do, and then you can make an adjustment or 2 here or there for your preference. Moving on to the squad itself, we'll start with Bournemouth. And I will speak about this probably in this video, but also more in solving your problems. Battered Spurs. They did a job on Wolves, and Liverpool's Liverpool, right? So we'll put that aside for a second. But it's not like they didn't make any chances. They looked so good against Spurs. I was so impressed. I mean, the amount of times they played through them, how they suffocated them with their press, how they went long into Semenyo and then won so many second balls, how many attacks they were able to generate from different situations, how direct they were with those attacks, and how dangerous they looked. They should have been at least 3-4-0 up at some point in that game. And Semenyo looked unbelievable. I mean, everything apart from the finish was great. He even had a chance to get an assist when he slipped in Tavernier, but he had a good header. There was another shot it was a header that he met well. He should have put it away. There was another shot he had. He was so involved. He looked so dangerous. Even against Wolves, against his block, I mean, he got in the end a couple crosses and he blazed a couple over the bar, or at least one, and then blazed something else over the bar. He's the only player I've seen so far who's just looked a cut above, to be honest with you. And then with the fixtures that he's got coming up, with the fact that he might be eyeing a move in January, or at least in the next summer window, with the fact that he doesn't have Europe, and the fixtures, whilst they might appear bad on the FDR, as I've expressed with Bournemouth, and I will do in solving your problems, because I want to talk about them, they have this inverse FDR, because they are so well suited to these games with more space, more chaos, more transitions, but give them a block to break down, and they revert to, honestly, a more typical approach to break it down. And I actually don't think they should, and I'll speak about that there. But yeah, he looks great. Evan Nilsson is a player I really like. I think he's someone you can expect to get quite consistent returns, and at his price offers magnificent value. And then Senesi is just this DEFCON monster. So your floor is so high with him. And then if you ever get a clean sheet, you're looking at a high ceiling. And that's great, right? And look, he doesn't even need to play the next 2 weeks in the side. You can just play him in 6, 7, 8 when he has the better fixtures defensively and go from there, right? So the value in Bournemouth, I think, is magnificent. I'm not going to speak about Cucurella JP so much. I've done that so many times on this channel. For me, JP, especially with the lap injured, secure at least 90 minutes most games. I won't talk about penalties because Palmer's pretty much back. And he's just a top player, right? So I think he's presents amazing value. Cucurella with his role, on the assumption he continues the more box-to-box left centre midfield type of role, again, presents great value. And we seem to have a little bit of luck on our side at the moment. I mean, it still takes a little bit of luck for what we did in the Club World Cup final. And then we got pretty lucky against Fulham to keep a clean sheet. You could argue we got a bit lucky against Palace as well. So when that's happening, in terms of clean sheets and the attacking potential, that's all good. Salah is there because he's the best attacker in the league and he still has Burnley. And I've seen people wildcarding him out and I couldn't do it ahead of Burnley. I'd still want Liverpool coverage. And you have a double up here. The reason I didn't go for the triple up is because I'd want them out sooner rather than later. And just in case one of them gets rotated for one of the games that I'd want, maybe 5 or 6 less so, that would be a little bit annoying. But yeah, Salah is the captaincy option this week. And Salah as someone you can very reliably bet on for the next 2 game weeks. Obviously, he hasn't looked as good. Obviously, the dynamics have changed, but nonetheless, he's still there. And then in terms of Erling Haaland, the transition's really him and Mateta into Haaland and whichever mid you want from game week 6. And that works perfectly, right? Because you get Mateta then for Sunderland at home, West Ham away. You get Salah for Burnley away, Everton at home. And then you just switch him into Haaland for Burnley at home and whatever mid you want. In Ndiaye, I like his fixture this week. You'd bench him next week, and then you play him in game week 5 for West Ham at home. Him being on penalties is a big thing as well for me. I like that. It provides a sense of security, both floor and ceiling together. So I think that's floor over the long term, but in a singular game, the ceiling. I think that's great. The other 2 mids, you may not be as hot on. When I look at the requirements for an Ange Postecoglou winger, which that I don't think will change too much. His physical profile is far more suited than, for example, Amari Hutchinson's or even James McAtee, but I doubt James McAtee will be playing the Ange Postecoglou winger type of role. He can play on the left and the right, which works fantastically well for his minutes. And he's just quality. I mean, he's got picked up 2 assists for Switzerland in the IB as well. So yeah, I really like it at 6-1. And it gives you some cover for Burnley away, Sunderland at home. By the way, the idea with this is not to free hit in 6, right? It's not to go with that plan. I mean, Bournemouth, you'll have triple Bournemouth against Leeds, JP and Cucurella at home to Brighton, which isn't great, but like it's still more than enough. Cunha has a decent fixture. He has Brentford. Haaland will have Burnley. You'll have whatever mid you choose. It's a really, and then obviously Enjoy will have Sunderland. Sells will have Sunderland. It's a really strong team overall. In Game Week 6. Okay, fine. Yeah, you won't have Triple City. You might only have 1 or 2 depending on which mid you buy. But it's still very solid, right? So yeah, that's what I'd buy Enjoy. And Mateta, like I said, just here for Sunderland at home, West Ham away. Fairly easy. Oh, Cunha, I'm still super high on him. I think he looks great. He's probably going to play on Sunday from what I'm seeing. And long-term prospects at that price, I think they're great. So for me, one of the easier picks. Who has not been spoken about? Well, Perkez, no, it's just basically Sells now. It's just basically Sells. I still think all the keepers are a bit rubbish as options. I don't look at many of them and think, yeah, you're definitely going to keep a clean sheet. I don't really want to pay 5.5, especially when those guys typically don't have the highest of ceilings. My thought process with Ange is, as discussed earlier, yeah, it might be a different system. It won't be the one of last year's. Forest weren't keeping too many clean sheets anyway. The psychological impact of a new manager might actually help their defensive prospects, as well as, well, clean sheet prospects, as well as actually having more of the ball. And when you combine that with the fixture in 5 and 6 and the short-term upside there, I'm happy enough to go with Sells. So this is my wildcard drop. I actually think it's very solid. If someone told me, oh, you had to have this team, I'd be more than happy to do so. I do think it's probably, no, it is better than my current team. And yeah, I'd be fairly happy to go with this. Would I want to wildcard into this? No, because I think down the line it's going to cause you some issues. Just whatever wildcard you go to, given the fixture swings. But for now, I think it'd be more than solid. I built 2 free hit drafts because some of you will want Haaland, some of you will want Salah, so I thought I'd just tweak it slightly. Some of you will want both, some of you will want neither, but these are what I think to be the 2 best when accounting for 1 Salah, 1 Haaland. I expressed earlier that I'm not super high on the Palace defense or Palace in general, given their absentees for the game. However, on a free hit, there is still probably no better prospect to bet on, especially when you consider Munoz's attacking upside. And that's one reason I have him here. Mateta, I mean, it's a striker on penalties with Sunderland at home, who himself is quality. So again, I was more than happy to go with that. I just looked at the rest of the defensive prospects, and I didn't like any of them. So I just went with the best fixture in Dean Henderson, right? So that's why I've gone there. But if you wanted to take that out, I wouldn't mind at all. One thing you'll see missing from here is Arsenal assets. And I'm seriously down on them compared to other people. I do not think so far they have shown enough to warrant selection on a free hit or even on a wildcard against Nottingham Forest. And let's say outside of the free hit, on a wildcard or just general selection. I mean, they have City and Newcastle after. It's not like it gets any easier, right? And yeah, I know what people say about Ange Postecoglou in his system, but I still personally don't think he's going to employ the exact same thing. So with that in mind, and what Gyökeres has shown so far, and that's the fact that it's not been great, the fact that what Arsenal have shown attacking-wise has not been great so far, I wouldn't be betting there. And I think you still have to pay respect to the quality of players that Forest have. So that's that. Gyökeres is there in both sides for some attacking threat as well as clean sheet potential. Kirk is very much the same and particularly good on DEFCON. I mean, 6 in the first game in 60 minutes and then 9 in the other 2, which is very solid when you consider a little bit of attacking threat. Not much, but a little bit. The other ever-presents are Harvey Barnes. I think Newcastle versus Wolves is still one of the better fixtures. With Gordon out, he's probably guaranteed to start. I think he also functions better when he has a 9 to play with. And given he's got a natural 9 to play with. And given this is probably more match fit than people expected. I mean, assist and a goal for Congo in the international break. You know, maybe he starts. Automad's been there for a while, so I'm not sure if he starts. But at least one of them probably will. And you may see Barnes profit as such. And still one of the better fixtures. Grealish gave them problems down that side as well. Gakpo and Njai are the 2 other ever-presents. Villa, like I said, I'm not trying to time the bottom with them. When Everton are playing well and Njai is on penalties and he himself looks hungry. I mean, he scored 2 back post goals so far, playing on his non-preferred side. I know he plays there for Senegal, but he's definitely better on the left, at least as a player. And the fact he's got into that spot twice, I think it's a really good sign, right? In so many ways. Then, like I said, penalties, his overall quality. And the other thing against Wolves is it's not like he was hugging that right touchline. So many times I saw him pop up in the middle of the pitch, close to the box, in the D, on the left-hand side, and they would overload that side with Dewsbury Hall, Grealish, and Njai at times, right? So if he's going to get into those zones, then the routes to points is still certainly there. And he played 90 in that game. He played 90 in the first game. Yeah, he played 63 against Brighton, but as I tweeted, I think he went off because he had some minor knock. I saw him hold his leg just before that, I think. And then he went off pretty much straight away after. So that would make sense. And like I said, I'm pretty sure David Moyes loves him. So he's there for that reason. And Villa defensively still, whilst I'd be a little bit more confident on them going forward, especially with the new recruits, defensively, I still think they can be gotten at, especially if those injuries to Kamara and Onana are still there. Gakpo, I mean, I want triple Liverpool. For Burnley, he's in really good form. He looks really sharp. He's a mid, so the upside that comes with that, fairly self-explanatory. In one side, I've got Evan Nilsson. In one, I've got Semenyo. As I expressed earlier, what Bournemouth are doing at the moment is absolutely magnificent. Brighton will still give you a game whereby they want to engage in a game, which is a bit more like Bournemouth's model as well, right? They won a game which is a bit more open. You saw that against City, particularly in the second half. They're happy to engage in that, and both these guys can profit from that, right? So depending on the structure, I chose one, and that is basically it. I mean, Ekitike is in the Haaland draft because I still want triple Liverpool, right? And he provides my route into that. I think Isak will get like max 15 minutes anyway. I honestly don't even think it's worth starting him. I mean, bringing him on. He's barely had any minutes. Just let him train. If you want to give him like his debut, at least give it to him, I'd say at home in game week 5, where he can be a bit more impactful just in case anything happens. Unnecessary risk to take when they'll probably have it wrapped up anyway. So that's that. And yeah, that is that. And then one draft obviously has Salah. One draft obviously has Haaland. In terms of the other alternatives, like I said, I wouldn't want to go for Arsenal players personally. If you wanted to go a bit heavier on Newcastle, whether you wanted to bet on Vissa early, whether you wanted to bet on Alanga, whether you wanted to bet on Newcastle defense, I don't mind it. I can see the upside. I just be slightly concerned that 1, Newcastle haven't won a game. 2, Strand Larsen's back, the goal threat there. 3, Alanga's expected minutes / overall goal threat, and Vissa's expected minutes. And who else is there to really bet on? I mean, I guess you could double City, but do you really want to put that much emphasis on them when they haven't been playing superbly well? And so on and so on. I wouldn't mind a United asset. I think United score against City. So if you wanted to go in Buemo or Cunha or even Bruno, I wouldn't mind that at all. Aside from those guys, though, I'd probably stay clear of the rest. There's probably like another option, for example, that I haven't said. For example, let's say Grealish instead of Ange. That isn't so different, but this is the current crop that I would go for. And yeah, of course, there's other good ones, but this is my personal preference. You may be looking for an Ismaila Sarr replacement. You may be looking for a mid replacement in general. So what I thought I'd do is I'd go through the list, the very long list, and essentially just discuss what I think their prospects are like, both for the short term, the long term, the medium term, how they would suit in certain situations, and go from there. Before I touch on any of these guys, something I tweeted about was European matches and the impact of them and how they're becoming even more impactful in FPL than they ever have been. The load of work that these guys are putting their body under is immense. And squads, while still getting bigger, I wouldn't say are as big enough as is needed for the definite prevention of a lot of injuries. Some are going to happen, right? Most likely. But for at least most of them to get prevented, I still wouldn't say the squads are big enough. And even if they are big enough, they don't have the talent in the second man for every spot that would be required. So when these guys have to travel, they have to play more, they're more susceptible to injury. And just in general, injuries have been on the rise for a while now, for reasons we can discuss another day. I would take that into consideration. I'm not saying to avoid someone, right? I don't avoid Salah just because he has Champions League football, or don't avoid like João Pedro just because he has Champions League football, but consider it. That's what I'm saying. Right. We'll go left to right. Semenyo, as I've expressed, fixtures are there for him. The next 3 suit him stylistically. He's looked probably the most dangerous player in the league this season. The number of shots he's taken, the chances he's created, he's got so much quality. The only thing I wonder with him is still his ability to haul. I know he scored back-to-back braces, Leicester, Liverpool, but outside of that, he hasn't, and I just want to see it at least a couple more times to sell me on that. Aside from that, top. Absolutely top. Gakpo's interesting because you see his form, you see the quality of player, you see the quality of side, you see how many chances they make, you see Burnley away, Everton at home, and you think, great. The only thing is, what if he decides to play Ekitike and Isak together? Do I think he'll do that? No. I think Gakpo will keep his spot on the left. Ekitike is not a natural left winger, especially the role that Gakpo does, even out of possession, is not one that Ekitike would be well suited to do, in my opinion. So, going forward, I still think his expected minutes would be good. It's just the swing in 6 isn't so attractive. But you never know, if Palace still have injuries, they may be significantly weaker. And then on, maybe they're just in such good form, they just slap everyone anyway. So I think this is a good option. I might go there myself. I just consider the rotational element, maybe less expected minutes for every game, even if he starts. And the other thing is the swing in 6, right? Rangers, my view remains very much the same from the start. I want to see him in the games first, for example, against United, against Arsenal, because it's really hard to predict exactly what Pep's going to do. Even if you can pick the lineup, how he's going to platform those players exactly is not as easy. And I would like to see that first as opposed to transfer him in. If you have him, I think, yes, more than okay to start. But where his strengths very much lie in a game which can be shown in like a game like Wolves, for example, where they don't protect the middle as well as you probably like, where he has that space to almost ghost into the box, but even just carry from the middle and hurt you in transition in that sense. You're not going to get that, especially against Arsenal as much. United, yeah, more so, but not against Arsenal. So I can see this as a maybe wait and see. And if you got him, start him. Enzo, this is so dependent on how you view Enzo Maresca in terms of what system he implements, right? If you get an Enzo Fernandez box-to-box as an FPL asset, great. It could be really good value. But when Palmer comes back, does he revert to the typical diamond that we've seen? Stick him on the right and he's not box-to-box in the same fashion. He's not crashing as much. He has greater responsibilities in build-up. Maybe, right? Especially when we've got Levi Colwill injured. Maybe he essentially puts a bit more responsibility there. Yeah, maybe. Especially against those sides that are going to press us high to be able to get out against that and deal with that. So it's very much, like I said, how you interpret what system's going to be placed. I would personally just wait. Like, if he's going to come good again and again and again, and the system's going to stay, or at least once or twice more, and the system's going to stay for him, then great. Otherwise, I would leave it. Grealish, I mean, he just looks great. Doesn't have European football. I like the fixture this weekend in 5. No, this weekend in 6. Apologies. And even after that, I wouldn't be surprised if he kept going, given the quality he has. I think people forgot how good he is, given his time at City, or at least his recent spells at City. But yeah, I don't mind it one bit. He's probably the most popular. He's the most popular option. And yeah, if you wanted to go there, no complaints. The only thing is he's never been like this ruthless goal scorer. And I think you'd have to be okay with that, right? And that does cap your ceiling. So that's something to consider. I really like the United prospects for their mids. I mean, they don't have European football. City away and Chelsea at home, I don't think it's bad fixtures for them at all from an attacking standpoint. I mean, both games will serve up transitions, and they've all three here have the quality to hurt in that capacity, especially in Mbeumo and especially Cunha. I'd say I understand why people would have Mbeumo higher than him, especially functioning as the runner. For me, just what I've seen so far, I prefer Cunha still as an option. Obviously picks up that injury, but if he's okay, I would still take Cunha. But any of these three, I don't think anyone can really complain with the selection. And I think the prospects here are really good for the long term. Like a long-term hold, even doubling up, I wouldn't mind so much. Paquetá, my only concern is the fixtures. That's my only concern with them. Yeah, they beat Forest 3-0, but it was like a mini collapse from Forest at the end. I think other teams will give them harder tests. And the other thing, he's probably not the highest ceiling player. At 5'9", obviously with penalties and DEFCON, and then the output, yeah, presents good value. I just think you can do a little bit better. Over the long time, I think you can do a little bit better, especially with the fixtures. Kudus, as I've said from the start, big no from me. Goal threat is too minimal for a mid spot in a team where there's a lot of other guys. Semenyo, Gakpo, Reinders, Enzo, Cunha, Mbeumo, Paquetá, all who have higher goal threat. I personally wouldn't be going there. And that's not to mention some of the others like Salah and Palmer. So yeah, for me, absolutely not. He may get great expected minutes and assists here and there, but without the goal threat, I wouldn't want to pick him. Palmer, I mean, I guess we're just waiting for an update. Oh, by the way, with Cunha, he's been training, at least in the gym, since like 2-3 days ago. So I think you can reasonably expect him to play on Sunday. And he did caption it saying Sunday in Manchester. So I think you can expect him there on Sunday. Palmer, I'm not as sure, haven't seen anything. But if you've got him, I'd say probably start him. I mean, all the reports pointed to a Game Week 4 return for him. It was looking like it wasn't too bad of an injury. Chelsea just wanted to manage him well, give him that time to rest. It coincided nicely with the IB, so I would keep him. Eze is really interesting. I just wouldn't go yet. I mean, with Forest City, Newcastle, I think you can wait till the fixture swing and his expected minutes are more secure. Xavi Simons could do really well at Spurs. He could do really, really well at Spurs. The fixtures are there for him to capitalize on. But with him just coming there and the Champions League, I think you could see a lot of 70. And whilst he could do really well, if he went here and he blanked, I still don't think anyone can blame you. I would just be slightly cautious of the fact that he could be rotated maybe once, given the fact that the workload for that Spurs squad will be so high. And he's the only one currently with Maddison and Kulusevski out that can play that more attacking 8 role in that style, right? But an abundance of talent, the fixtures are there. And if you were to go there, I wouldn't be surprised if he pops off. Rodgers, as I've said a few times in this video, I really like the fixtures from 5, but I wouldn't try and time the bottom. So I just wait till 5. If you got him, I think you've got to keep him pretty much and, go from there. I've spoken about the European matches. When looking at short-term versus long-term fixtures, something I still think is being a little bit under-discussed and underappreciated this season is chip strategy in general. Maybe because we have so many options that people have been focusing on the players more. But I don't think you should always be picking players just for that short, medium-term upside, as we've seen quite a bit this season in comparison to others. It sounds like very basic advice, but things have been a little bit underdone going for those long-term fixtures. For example, like an Arsenal asset early on the wildcard, to make it easier for yourself down the line. Because when those swings happen, for example, in 8, in 13, and all the chaos of the European football arises, I think you'll be really happy with the fact that you've got someone there that you don't need to charge for X number of weeks. So I would say with these players, ensure you're picking quality players. And even if their fixtures are a little bit iffy in the short term, for example, on paper, United's look bad. Long term, they're okay. They've got a lot of talent and they could be such great value because they're probably just not going to get injured given the lack of European football. That is all she wrote for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop a like, please. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hype the video. All and any would be very much appreciated. A lot to come this week. A lot saved for solving your problems. A lot to discuss in my own team selection. And it should be a really interesting week with so many chips flying around and people having so many decisions to make. Please do leave your comments. I shall see you very shortly. And in the meantime, have a terrific day. Goodbye.